Wonder Woman is easily my favorite movie that we've watched in the DC animated original movie catalog thus far. It sees the origin story for the titular heroine, with her meeting Steve Trevor and first going into the outside world from her home to stop a grave threat. Many centuries ago, the Amazons were a major force in the world, subjugated by and eventually rebelling against the god of war Ares. Led by Hippolyta, alongside major characters Artemis, Persephone, and Alexa, the Amazons defeated Ares and his son, whom he sided with Hippolyta during the Amazons' enslavement. Hippolyta was then forced to spare him under orders from a bad voice actor playing Zeus, and had to be talked down into doing so by a bad voice actor playing Hera. For the price of not getting vengeance on Ares, Hippolyta and her Amazons were gifted the island paradise of Themyscira, where they are free from aging and hidden from the outside world. As well, Ares is rendered mortal by bracelets which can only be removed by a fellow god, and given to the Amazons as a prisoner. Finally, Hippolyta was given a daughter who wasn't born from Ares, made from clay, or sand in this version, and given the name Diana. In the present time, or I guess the 80s, because that's when the comic this was based on was written. Diana is a young woman who longs to explore the outside world and reunite the Amazons with mankind. Her opportunity arrives when an American pilot, Steve Trevor, is shot down and winds up on Themyscira. Hippolyta deems him to not be a threat and so orders a contest to determine who will escort him back to the world of man. This, of course, ends up being Diana against Hippolyta's wishes. At the same time, Ares is freed, having seduced the Amazonian warrior Persephone, and Diana is given the secondary task of locating and bringing Ares back to Themyscira before he can regain his godhood and ravage the world of man and Amazon. She's also aided by Steve Trevor, who has become smitten with the princess. From there, action ensues. You get some will they won't they with Steve and Diana, before Ares of course regains his godhood, where he's challenged by Diana and the Amazons, who arrive to help defeat him and his army, where Diana of course triumphs and wins the day. Sometime later, Hippolyta acknowledges that she was wrong in keeping the Amazons away from the rest of humanity for so long, and allows Diana to live among them as the Amazons' ambassador, living with Steve Trevor and fighting villains along the way. Yay! So the obvious first talking point is the theme of sexuality, femininity, and womanhood. The major conflict for Diana is her naivete in regards to the nature of man and the outside world, having been essentially brainwashed by Hippolyta and her prejudices against man.
See, my child, is it not as I've always said? Here the true nature of man is laid bare. What other depraved thoughts must you be thinking?
God, your daughter's got a nice rack.
Shall I kill him now, my queen?
While she is certainly more optimistic about them than her fellow Amazons, even she has a distrust of them, including a distrust of Steve Trevor, an idea that he doesn't exactly do a lot to remedy. In the end, though, she comes to realize that there's more to mankind than rage, fear, and lust, and comes to appreciate their more honorable aspects. Their love for their fellow man and woman, their respect for women despite the bravado and masculine gestures, and their selflessness and willingness to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. There's actually a thoughtful critique here of gender roles and isolation and all that of both men and women, though admittedly I do feel like it's a bit one-sided. The Amazons are portrayed as fearless warriors, but it's pointed out by Steve Trevor that closing themselves off was just about the most cowardly thing imaginable. Meanwhile, throughout the film, Steve ogles the girls, exclaims how attractive they are, and even tries to get Diana drunk, presumably to get her to have sex with him, while Diana just spouts generalizations about men and mankind the whole time. Personally, I find Steve's transgressions against the opposite gender to be much worse than Diana's, so I would have liked a bit more show of the Amazons being assholes, for lack of a better word. Overall, the biggest problem I have with this movie is that it's just too short. The pacing is good, the voice acting, for the major players anyway, is pretty fantastic all around. The animation is solid, though I think it uses artificial shaky cam a bit too much, and the story, while simple, is executed very well. What is here, I have very little to complain about on a macro scale. I just wish that there was more to dig into. I want equal bad vibes from both man and Amazon. I want more scenes with Persephone arguing her point and justifying why she made the decision to betray the Amazons. On that example, as of now, all we get is her initial betrayal, which comes off as straight villainy, and then a 30-second confrontation with Hippolyta in the final battle, where she says that her only crime was falling in love, which is what seems to sway the Queen of the Amazons to change more than anything. And there are, of course, other smaller problems with the film. I already mentioned the voice acting, both that it was good and two specific examples of bad. In general, it seems like the actors aren't that committed to the action noises, which, while minor, adds a lot to sell the scene for me. Here's an example. In the final battle before Diana gets to Ares and is fighting her way up to him, she argues with him, but no care is made to match exclamations of exertion with her actions on screen. So if I just played this voice line without any of the sound effects and, stuff like that, you would probably assume that she was standing still, you feel me?
You're not going to conquer man, Ares. The Amazons will never let you.
Another issue is one that I had with Superman Doomsday, that being some of the odd cuts in the action scenes. Take the one where she throws Deimos, yeah, that's Deimos, into the shoe store. She enters, and it's like a smash cut into him slamming down from the hole in the ceiling with no real build-up, even though it's shot like a shock moment after she walks in and wonders where he went or something like that. I noticed a few more examples, but this is a very minor point that I don't actually have much issue with. One thing I do take issue with, though, and this is entirely subjective and so minor that I actually stopped noticing after a while, what the hell is with the lips? Like, I get it, women tend to have fuller lips than men, but geez, they didn't even try with Diana's in some of these shots. On that topic, the designs in general were hit or miss. Most of them were pretty generic, and some were just way too out there. Like Deimos, for example, wasn't he a normal dude in mythology? Granted, I get that you can't really do much with classic Wonder Woman without messing it up. And all of the Amazons are in, uniforms most of the time? Sure, but look at Hades. Just look at him. What the hell? What were they thinking? And there's also some lore and continuity issues on top of that. It's established that the bracelets that render Ares mortal can only be destroyed by a fellow god, but the movie never actually establishes who is and isn't a god. Hippolyta seems to be on relatively equal footing with Ares, who is a god and is established as one. More egregiously to me, though, is that Artemis and Persephone are Greek gods. Artemis is the virgin goddess of the hunt and of the moon, and it's implied that Apollo is still her brother in this movie, but never that she has godhood, quote unquote.
You know, Artemis, I found myself saying a little prayer for you last night.
Did you, Diana? How kind.
Yes, I prayed that Apollo would inspire you with a strategy that might end your rather long string of defeats at my hand.
Praise Apollo.
Anyway, Persephone was the goddess of vegetation and daughter of Zeus and Demeter, who was tricked into wedding Hades, whom she has to visit 3 months out of the year, explaining the winter season. Well, Ares and Persephone are an item in this movie, so why couldn't she have been the one to free Ares? If this Persephone isn't the goddess, like she was just named after her or something, or if Persephone simply isn't a god in this canon, then that probably should have been explained for us mythology nerds. But the biggest issue, other than the butchered length, is the villain. Ares is such a huge pussy in this movie. He's defeated in single combat, immediately in the prologue, and is once again beaten not once, but twice by Diana. It's only when he influences the US president to launch a nuclear missile at Themyscira. Don't worry, Steve shoots it down and infects the entire island with radiation. Anyway, it's only after that point that Ares really poses a physical threat to Diana.
Oh crap.
Even then, she seems to have the advantage in terms of skill, and while I was hopeful in that one part that she got battle damage, that there would be some lasting effects of these attacks, that battle damage disappears, and then Diana punches his helmet off. So, yeah, screw me, I guess. As well, the structure of the story perpetually puts him on the back foot, running away from Themyscira, running away from Diana, and even when the final battle begins, he actually has to wait until the missile is fired before he actually becomes a threat. Also, he can summon lightning, I guess, and even though he can summon a lot of them in quick succession, fast enough to keep Diana pinned down, deflecting him with her bracelets and whatever, just one direct hit is enough to essentially defeat him, allowing Diana to cut his head off. Okay. And really quick, how much cooler would it have been if Diana reflected the lightning bolt into Ares instead of lassoing him into its path downwards? Man, missed opportunity if I've ever seen one. But despite my bitching about him, the final battle between Ares and Diana is a good one, where they blast each other through the White House and the Outer Gardens and some Dragon Ball Z level shit. It's a feast for the eyes, and it was immensely satisfying to watch, though the inconsistent powers of each fighter brings it down just a tad. Overall though, Wonder Woman is a solid film, worthy of the DC name, and arguably better than the live-action 2017 film as an origin story. Its pacing and its characters are its strongest elements, which is a good thing, given that it had the task of making us care about Wonder Woman as a solo hero, which we haven't really gotten in animation yet, and thankfully, it works out splendidly. So I guess you could say that Wonder Woman was pretty wonderful.